everybody hear me? Maybe a thumbs up might be the best response there. Great. Okay. Hey, well, listen, it's good to see some returning faces, some new faces. Super appreciative of that. For those that have not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Matt Dutton, and I am lucky enough to serve on the board of BIIS Sports. And I want to welcome you to the 360 Club After Hours event. And don't worry, I will tell you more about what 360 Club means after the program, but I'd love to spend more time on the program than me just talking. So if willing, I would appreciate if you guys in the chat room wouldn't mind sharing your preferred email address. We're not going to stalk you. We'd love to keep in touch, say thank you, provide some newsletter details down the road. But honestly, this is an extension of us just wanting to get to know you better, and hopefully you get to know more about BIIS Sports. For those of you that are not familiar with BIIS Sports, or actually that are, welcome back. I know a lot of the folks on this meeting may already be, but for those that are new, I'm glad you decided to join us for 30 minutes today. Hopefully after today's session, you'll have a little slice of what we're all about. And if you're like me, you'll want to know more. But the best way I can describe what this organization does, if I had to do it very simply, is they change lives, right? And I don't mean that metaphorically. I don't mean that figuratively. I mean, they often change lives. They change the trajectory and the paths that some people are on, and it's all for the better. And one thing that I always emphasize in these discussions is, and I always say this about BIIS Sports, it's not a charity, right? To be clear, it's an organization that really empowers and supports two kinds of people. And there's two buckets. There's people who, despite physical or other challenges, they possess an innate desire and passion to succeed. And then there's others who may have self-doubt because of what I call their perceived ability. And they simply need the right opportunity to find and to unleash that passion and that perseverance. But I know my limitations. I am definitely not the person to talk about what BIIS Sports is as much as the person I'm going to introduce you to. Her name is Ashley Thomas. She's the founder and the CEO of BIIS Sports. I've had the pleasure of knowing Ashley for over 10 years now, and I consider her to be an absolute force in getting good things done, right? And she's so much more than a CEO. She's honestly a mother of three, and as a father of three, I know what that takes, right? So that's just a belt in and of itself. She's also a Paralympic kayaker, and she's really a leading public advocate who's recognized for her efforts, not just here in our local market, but also nationally. So really pleased, one, to know her, and two, to be able to work alongside her. And with that, Ashley, take it away.
Thank you, Matt. That was a very kind introduction. And for all of you, Matt is one of our board members, and we have known each other for maybe even longer than 10 years, but it's a joy in the journey when we all think back where we were 10 years ago and what's happened, and it takes leadership also from the board level, and we are so grateful in our community people. So one of the things I do like to say is disability is, it is not the end, but disability does need opportunity, and we can be defined by those opportunities. And BIIS Sports creates those in many ways for people with all sorts of disabilities. So I like to joke and say we do not discriminate. We serve children, youth, adults, veterans, seniors. The reality is when disability enters your life, often there's a cavity that needs to be filled, and adaptive sports is a way to build yourself again, support the family, and find independence. So one of the things I'm very excited about today is those pictures you saw earlier of this little young guy called Mike. And we used to call him Little Mike because we had another Mike and he was Big Mike. So we had Little Mike and Big Mike. All these youngsters are grown up. And I think when we do programming, it's more than just the sport. It's thinking about what you're going to do with your future. It's thinking about, you have a purpose on this earth, and what is that purpose? And so I am so honored to introduce two amazing people. William Christie, who is our official host and questionnaire, and he's got that beautiful red. He's over at NC State where he works, and he's closed his session for 1 hour for us. And he will be asking the questions. And then DJ Mike, which is our young man who used to be Little Mike. And we have some interesting questions because they're both grown, they're working. And I think that's part of the story of change that we share it is more than the limitation. It is about living life well with disability. All right, take it away, William.
Thank you, Ms. Ashley. Mike, I've been looking forward to doing this for a long time, and it's always great to see you. You're one of my favorite people when I first moved here, so thank you for coming on today.
Oh, that means a lot, Will. Thank you. I've been excited to do this also.
Thanks, Mike. So just like to get just some initial question, just how did you hear about Bridge to Sports at first?
So when I first, actually, my mom heard about Bridge to Sports by Googling it. I was in a Miracle League baseball, which at the time when I first got introduced to sports and whatnot, it was great, but it wasn't competitive enough for me. So she was trying to find more competitive, adaptive sports. And so she Googled wheelchair basketball in Triangle area and found Bridge to Sports. That Friday, I was going to wheelchair basketball practice. And ever since then, it's been amazing. It was an amazing experience.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. So you got involved with wheelchair basketball. Were there any kind of other adaptive sports that you played during that time?
So through Bridge to Sports, I played wheelchair basketball. I did track and field, which included the 50 meter, 100 meter, 200 meter, including what the field part would be shot put, javelin, and discus. And then we would do archery and other things like we would go on like long walk, like just jogs and whatnot of just like 1-2 miles every now and then, and it was just really awesome to be part of all of that. Just so it really like every now and then I got introduced to bocce ball, which I never even heard of bocce ball until Bridge to Sports, and that was kind of fun to like get introduced to. So really like just a huge arrangement of just different sports and whatnot that I was able to try and test out and really pursue.
So, you and I kind of have like a bond in that we both played wheelchair basketball together. And I will say that you're still like my favorite point guard because you have the most creative passes I had ever seen. Like no one tops you in my book. But you've talked about like the vast array of adaptive sports that you participated in. What are like some of your most memorable moments, whether it be wheelchair basketball or other adaptive sports that kind of stuck with you?
Honestly, my most memorable moment, and it was kind of like a series of moments where it was, I believe, it was my first or second year. We went to a conference in, I believe it was Alabama, Birmingham, where we played a New York team and we lost 55-2. And that that's one of those moments where like, if you didn't love the game, you're out of it. Like if I didn't love the game, I would have quit. But 55-2 really hurt. But later, a few years later down the road, times change. We played that team probably maybe 4 or 5 years later, and we won. We beat them. I can't remember the score, but I remember beating them and just remembering how bad of a beating we got as a team. but one thing I did learn through that is like it's not always a bad thing to lose. So it was a very humbling moment, I would say. And it taught me a lot of like patience and how to like determination and persistence to get better.
Awesome. You speak on patience and persistence and determination and courage, and these are wonderful values to have. What other life lessons did you gain from playing adaptive sports? And like, how have you been able to translate that into not just your play on and off the court or field, but also off the court or field too?
Well, I would say that I really learned about uh, how to incorporate different people's strengths and weaknesses, and how to like use a group of people to help strengthen somebody's weakness, or like compensate within the group to make a full-fledged, like, well-oiled machine to then do amazing things. And that was just on the court. It was when I got off the court, it really took me a while to figure out, wait, I still have to figure out what are these people's weaknesses and strengths, so that I can figure out how I can use them better in terms of like positions and whatnot. Like, is this guy, is he really good creatively? Is he going to be a great light guy? Or is he really good with his ears and he knows the mixing board or whatever? Can he do a sound position or whatever? So it's really like you get to learn a lot about uh, how to deal with different people and different perspectives, and you get to learn on how to really work with people, like, and as a whole, like, you just get to learn how to work with them just better.
I could not have said it any better than you did, and I have my master's. um, I, you know, you say these, your answers are filled with such depth and detail, and you know, usually, like, when we've interviewed people in the past, you know, they either are still in, you know, adaptive sports, or they still carry adaptive sports with them in some capacity. And, you know, kind of the idea of working is something that's like sort of in the future for them. But it seems to me like you've gotten into DJing, right? So how did you get into DJing at first? Like, was it always just like a hobby, or was it just something that you saw one day and you wanted to try out?
Well, I was always a musician. I was playing the drums since I was 3 years old, like just watching movies, playing the drums. I did middle school band, but DJing on its own, I really just kind of was in the music store one day, saw like the whole setup, was just kind of like, what is this? And so I started buying gear and like learning about it and really like making it become my entire life almost on accident. And like ever since I took the dive into like such like a interesting hobby, I would say at first it became my career. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So like all I learned how to make it not just like something that was just like, oh, I do this on my free time. I learned how to actually create it into my own job and make it my full-time career. Now, uh, with anybody in the adaptive world that isn't sure of like the job of what they're going to do after the fact, if they're still in high school or college or whatever, you might, I always looked into myself, what can I personally do that amazes people? And I've always found that music in my own has always brought people together and has been a wonderful thing in my life, and actually like helps people get through stuff, especially for somebody who's in a wheelchair to actually be the main person DJing. A lot of people don't see that everywhere, and so a lot of people get hope from that. But I never understood that until later in life. When I first started DJing, I was just there for fun. Like I was just there to like just to play music, just to have a good time. But I'm
Yeah.
still there to have a good time. But it's it's
But
more
there's meaning behind the good time.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's a very long road of just figuring out everything, and just it led me to where I'm at now.
You know, you spoke about how there are some people who are just who aren't really looking into, you know, getting a job yet, or they haven't thought that far down the road. But for those individuals, let's say for the sake of this discussion, for people with disabilities who are struggling to find a job, right? What would be like your piece of advice to them, given the path that you've had to go through?
Patience is key one, because amazing things don't happen overnight. Sometimes, very rarely they do, but for the most part, it's a long 10, 20-year road that are just tiny little steps every day that you don't even realize that you're taking. So patience is key, but also believing in yourself is probably the most important thing I could say, because if you don't believe in yourself in whatever job, career, whatever you do, then you're just almost in a way doing it for nothing, in my opinion. Because like if you don't believe that you're gonna be happy doing this, or that this is your passion or whatever, then that's gonna truly be what makes you happy, is doing your passion and like truly like being like, how do I say it? Truly committing yourself 100% into your passion is going to make you the happiest. And from me doing that personally, I can say 100% it has made me much happier in the long run. Now, of course, there's some days where it's like, oh, this happened, that happened, the world's going to end, blah, blah, blah. But as a whole, I could say from my standpoint personally, I feel much better knowing what my capabilities are and how much joy I bring to people.
You know, one of the signs of a great interview or a great interviewee is that the interviewer wants to keep asking questions to keep the conversation going, even though we're on a budgeted amount of time. So, Mike, I've always had the profoundest love and respect for you, man. It's always great to catch up with you and talk with you and learn about you. I mean, you've always been that guy to me that's just been a real model of a human being. So thank you. And yeah, I think Miss Ashley, do you have any particular?
You can tell what they used to be Coach Ashley, then it became Miss Ashley. I keep going, no, you guys are grown, you can call me Ashley, but way back when. Well, you know, I do want to share a couple of things, because way back in the day, we didn't even have equipment. Remember, we were borrowing from everybody so we could play, because the rule is you've got to have sports shares. But one of the things, and you can't really see Mike, but he is a little person. And there's a rule that if you're a smaller stature person, you can get classification, meaning you play really with where your body height and capacities were. And Mike refused to take it. He said, nope, I'm moving up. I'm playing, I'm 13. I'm playing with the 13 and above. And you know, what's interesting is we did have so much diversity of skill set, but man, we did start winning games because we learned over that time who had what. But Mike was the strongest defender. Man, he was like a bulldog on those people. So he earned respect amongst every teammate. No, he was never a shooter. No one knew was going to throw the ball to Mike, because Mike wasn't a shooter, but he earned the respect of his teammates because he was a dogged defender. And that people hated him getting on their chair because he was just ruthless. So I think that was, that's one of the things that talked a little bit about his character as he was coming up through that. So Mike, I'm gonna go way back in the high school. Because I do want to ask one question. One of the things that we do is we do track grades, because life is more than sport. It is about a future. And Mike had some very interesting ideas when he was younger of what he wanted to do. But I think it's very common when you are a person with a disability and you haven't had opportunity, you've got to explore. So can you remember some of the things that, remember in 9th grade, you had one goal, 10th grade, it was another one. Do you remember all that?
I wanted to be a firefighter at one point. I wanted to be a chef one time. Who just you throw all the jobs in a hat and pick one, and that's what I wanted to be that week. So, and everything that I get into, I go 100% full. So it's like everything was just, I learned everything about whatever it is I was interested in. And then I learned, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I really want to do this instead. So,
And then the other cool thing with Mike, because I won't divulge too much because it's his story and he can tell the story, but his senior year, I will just say, Mike was very capable of making very good grades, but his senior year, he had a pretty impactful thing that happened. And I feel like it's part of when we have youth with disabilities, or when disability hits and you're trying to figure out your purpose again, it was very telling. So we were having pizza after practice, and his mom was being the proud mom going, Mike, tell Miss Ash. Anyway, Mike's being cool. He's a senior. Keen was there. She's like, leave me alone, Mom. I'm not talking to her right now. But after it was all over, I went up and said, hey, Mike, what's the good news? So you want to share a little bit about that story?
So I am currently on a drug infusion weekly. And during my high school career, I was going to DC once a week as part of the drug trial. So I was missing one day of school every week. Some weeks I'd miss the whole week because we had to run studies and tests or whatever it was, because it is a drug trial. And so my grades were completely obliterated, but I kept them up enough to where I could keep playing basketball. So, which was, I believe, a C.
Yeah.
But it was very much teetering on the lower end, and I would have to work my butt off to bring it up. But senior year is when the drug trial ended, and that's when I was able to actually go to school every week, like every day of the week, and not miss a full day of school a week. And I ended up getting on the AB honor roll, and then ended up on the A honor roll by the end of the school year. So really,
Yeah.
really just everything got better for me, I would say.
Well, and the other thing was with the Duke students made that beat mobile, but I remember asking what was the motivation. And Mike said, I found my purpose. And I think that is so powerful, because when disability hits, whether you grow up with it, whether you incur it through, accident, war, whatever, you lose your purpose. And I'm just so proud of Mike. And if anyone needs a really awesome DJ, we will have his connections so that you can reach out to Mike. But I will tell you, when we first started doing things, we gave Mike lots of opportunity for free work and get experience, but now we pay him because he is excellent. And so thank you, Mike, for sharing with us. I really appreciate that. William, thank you as always. Excellent work. Appreciate that. And gives me the opportunity to say, Matt, do you want to do the 360 Club piece?
Yeah, I'm glad to, unless you want to give some context.
Okay, so, people always ask 360, that's a weird number, but almost everything we do in adaptive sports has a wheel. It's a circle. And so the 360 is like a circle, because most all the adaptions, we need wheels for it. So that's really the background. But the 360 Club is a way we do scholarships through that. It allows us to buy things that we wouldn't otherwise have, but it's kind of the sustainers and the framework of who supports the work at Bridge to Sports. We do get grants, but grants are limited to how they can be used. And so we invite our community to be a part and help us keep the mission going. And 360 is what we're looking for on an annual basis. And I think that works down to $30 a month. But if you would like to join us and be a member of the 360 Club, I would like to invite you. And I think Brad will work his magic and put a link into the website, but go to our website, www.bridge2sports.org, and you will see all the wonderful things that we do. And we have our Valor Games events coming up soon, so we're super excited about that. We get to go up to 60 people this year. But there's never a dull moment around here. So
Ashley, let me give a chance real quick. I always like to open the floor back up to questions from the group. Really, again, thank you guys for joining. Any questions for Mike or William? I'll take the silence to mean that you're all like me in awe of all that he can do. It's impressive. And honestly, whenever I come to these, I mean, you know, Brad and Ashley and I host these, but I always feel like I leave this a better person and in a better place mentally because of the just the challenge that Mike and others have to come through and push through and then come out on the backside even better than I can imagine. I was going to put one thing in context. I'm not sure if you mentioned this, Ashley, but just when I think about the dollars around the 360 Club, it is $30 a month, right? And so I think about what that means for me. I've got 3 boys. So at Chick-fil-A, I burn through $30 in a heartbeat. I was going to say $30 is a tank of gas, but I think these days it's maybe a quarter tank of gas. But it's a couple beers at a Canes game. So it's things that we do quickly and don't think about, but it can go so much further with this organization, and it really does go a long way. If you think about the programs that they offer, apologies, my kids are printing something in the background, but that's the world we live in. A program fee is $150 per participant. But when you think about the actual costs of the programs to operate and implement, some of the sports can run up to $25,000. So you can do the math quickly on the $150 fee versus the $10,000 and $12,000 and $15,000 program cost to do it. And Bridges Sports is not immune to inflation like anybody else. So the money that we receive from the 360 Club and the grants, they help make up that gap in between. So Bridges Sports wants to make sure that they don't let anybody have to sit on the sideline and watch. Everybody that wants to participate gets to participate. And I think that's important in maintaining that fee. So again, Ashley can't put in the direct ask for donations or for you to give, but I hope you consider it. But more so than that, you know, giving can come down the road. What I'd love for you to do is to tell your friends about these. I'd love for you to go check out bridgesports.org. Learn about the organization, just the way I did, right? We don't make hollow asks of money. To us, that's not the important part. The important part is growing the Bridge Sports family. And I hope you guys consider yourselves part of that family now that you've been a part of it. I think the goal for these down the road is to be in person. We'll do virtual as we have to, but it'd be great to see you face to face one day. It's a great networking chance to meet some really good people doing some really great things. But if there's no further questions or comments, one, thank you again for joining. I know there's a lot going on these days with virtual calls and meetings and back-to-backs, but I hope we've ended the day on a positive note. I know I have, and I really appreciate you joining. So I hope to see you again soon, and thanks for joining. Take care.